Nonprofit and philanthropic leaders devote their lives to the service of others, but sometimes they need a little help. Kristine Michie has been deep in the work and the play of helping changemakers grow their impact for decades. So whether you're ladling soup at a local shelter or attending a UN peace conference, you need to find the balance between the heavy work and a light touch so you don't burn out. And Kristine believes play is at the center of that. Welcome to the PlayFull Podcast, bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the PlayFull Podcast. We are bringing fun to the serious work of changing the world. We are in our Civic Actors series, and today Samra Haider is with us, who we were just, before we started hit record, I was just saying, oh, I love it when I've got somebody on that I've known a long time, and that's the case. We've had a bunch of cool overlaps from Next Street and Red F and working in the CDFI space. So welcome, Samra. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's so great. You, not that long ago, this summer of 2025, started in a new role after you'd been in another role at the Center for Employment Opportunities CEO for a really long time. And now you're at the Geraldine R Dodge Foundation. So we'll definitely want to talk about that transition. That's a big change to make and exciting to talk about. And before we do that, I want to ask you some playful stuff. Yeah. So what are you doing to keep your spirits up and stay playful and joyful in this moment, which is pretty challenging?
I mean, I'm probably sure many of your guests say this, but I will say kids are a real pain sometimes, but they're the one thing that just like keep it playful no matter what you're doing. They'll just tell silly jokes. They just do these funny dances now, just all the things. So I think just engaging with my kids and actually just making sure I remember to engage with them in a playful way and not just engage with them as mom doing a million tasks and admin duties, but like it does take me a minute to say just stop and enjoy it. And so they keep me playful. We got them an indoor volleyball that they can play inside. So it's playful for about half an hour and then it gets annoying. But
wait, is this inside of the house?
Inside of the house, yes. I don't know what
do tell. Did you put up a net?
No, it's just like inside, but it's not as hard as a volleyball, so they can like play. There's like a whole Instagram world of indoor balls, which, still can be annoying, but not as destructive as a real ball.
Oh, this is very fun. Okay, how many kids and what are their ages?
I've got 3 kids, twin girls who are 8 and an 11-year-old son.
Oh, very fun. And then I got to get a little bit more of an image of this indoor volleyball. Well, I don't know.
When we get the ice cream, I can bring it to you and show it to you. I'm sure your Instagram is now going to give you a million ads for this indoor volleyball. So you'll be able to see it in other ways.
I love it. And I guess let me ask this. Is there a set time during the day or week when the indoor volleyball matches kick in? Or is it you just might come downstairs and it's happening?
Oh, no, it's like after dinner, you finish your dinner. If like homework is on track, then you get like a special treat and then you get to play for like about half an hour. So
I love it.
It's a good way to keep them in line a little bit too. Just keep on that, schedule.
I don't know why this is coming to mind. My kids are now 28 and 30, so this is a long time ago. But when kids like to blow bubbles with their milk with a straw? Yeah. and So that was happening, and I mean that's fine, but like it can get kind of messy if they really, really go for it. And so we created Wednesdays was bubble blowing in the milk night, and so we kind of just organized it all in one day, and the kids would have their glass of milk on a tea towel, and then the straw, and then I'd be like, your kids might want to try this. It kind of emerges out of the glass almost like a monster. It kind of takes on its own life and it kind of creeps around and across the table. It's quite fun. So we had
listen, they will
Wednesday nights.
Anything that's like slightly destructive, but they can do is like some sort of a competition with each other, they'll love.
I love it. So good. So you're right. A lot of our guests do, when I ask them who's the most playful person, it's often a kid. What are you doing to stay joyful? And kind of having those kids remind us kind of the essence of things. And when we're building this world, we're working on this change for them. I'm about to become a grandmother in December. And that, I think, I feel like I've heard over my life, do this for your children's children kind of thing. And suddenly there's going to be one of those. There's going to be my child's child. So it's making it really vivid. I took my mom and dad, who are 85, to the No Kings protest, and I was thinking about, doing this on behalf of this baby who is coming, in addition to, doing it for ourselves and everybody around us. So, okay. Let's talk about your transition from CEO, which is you are a CEO still, but CEO, the name of the organization, Center for Employment Opportunities,
Yep.
To Geraldine R. Dodge. And I see a real through line around economic mobility, economic empowerment, and it seems much of your career has focused in on that area of justice and inequity and seeking balance and fairness. What do I got right about that, and what are you adding to that?
No, it's completely right. I mean, I think when I started my career, I didn't really know, like, I didn't know how to put it together. And so I worked for a while as a management consultant, which I actually didn't mind from a, like the way you do work kind of point of view. Like, I like forming things that way, but I just always felt like this is not enough for me. This is not bringing me joy. This is not making me playful. So when I went to graduate school, it was shifting into this space. But again, it's like, no one tells you how you thread something together. And so Red F, which is where I first worked, really taught me, like, you can use your skills and do it, in this case, for people who would otherwise not get employed. So this idea of, like, economic justice really started there. And then it kind of, from Red F, I worked at CEO that was running a large social enterprise. And then I think the shift to Dodge, I love reentry. I love supporting people coming home from incarceration, but it was one population kind of in one area, and I wanted to think about, like, a broader way to approach that. So it's definitely the same thread. I think I don't know where that was seeded in me. Probably, my parents are from Pakistan. I was born here, but when I first went back, it was very clear to me. I was like, oh, by a chance of birth, my life is very different than what it could have been. And so I think that concept has always fueled me to try to create more equity anywhere that I am.
Yeah. Folks, we'll put the stuff in the show notes. We're talking a little bit in acronyms, which happens all the time in all sectors. I know in ours. REDF, REDF, the Roberts Enterprise Development Fund, is a place where Samra and I originally intersected. Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, for those, if I said it too quick when we first started, where Samra's now the CEO. And then we also, in the middle there, we're talking about the Center for Employment Opportunities, focused particularly on people returning back to community and how to help them with job opportunities in particular. Samra, I worked at a CDFI, Acción, and kind of later in my career, and just not that much longer before I started my firm that I have now 5 years ago. And even though I kind of intellectually certainly got the idea about employment and as a key factor in trying to unlock economic opportunity, and then business ownership, even kind of additionally, I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with the idea of entrepreneurship, for example, as a path out of poverty. And then when we got into the last 5 years, after George Floyd's murder in particular, and the Black Lives Matter movement, et cetera, this idea that the racial wealth gap got kind of like, in journalism terms, I'd say it went above the fold. Like suddenly it was kind of like, back in the day, if you looked at a newspaper in a newspaper box, if something was above the fold, it got more prominence. And it seems like these issues got a lot of prominence over the last 5 years and brought people into the movement that might not have been before. And now we're having a sort of a counter swing there. Tell me about the continuity that your work is providing and how you are now at Geraldine R. Dodge looking to not just fill gaps that are emerging, but really keep the movement going and moving forward.
It's such a great question. I mean, I think, again, and this is crystallized over time, but like whether it was helping people coming home from incarceration or closing the racial wealth gap, there's so many things, so many systems of what I think are oppression or keeping people back that are embedded with racism. So our justice system, legal system is completely embedded with structural racism. Why there is a wealth gap is not just because randomly Black and Latino people are not doing as well because it's just inherent. It's because of a lot of intentional ways that there's been this separation or this inability to kind of have equity and power. And so I think that's something I've seen and just really pulls at me. Like, how can we counteract, centuries of this happening? And so it's a big problem, and it can sometimes feel overwhelming. But to me, that's always the thing. It's like, yes, we want to figure out how we have these cool interventions, but we always have to think about where do they start from? And so how do we be more proximate? How do we have a culturally competent way that we address problems? So it's kind of always there. And I think, we've been talking about it at the Dodge Foundation, just is it closing wealth gap or is it about, giving everyone opportunity? And it is that, but without naming, it's important to name why we're in this predicament and not just say it's just, luck of the draw. It's actually
Right.
been intentional,
Yeah.
that there are these inequities.
Yeah, double click on all of that. I'm looking at some of the notes and some stuff I pulled off the website. So I don't think I mentioned this yet, folks that don't know. The Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation is focused specifically on the state of New Jersey and within New Jersey, some specific cities, communities. So that's really interesting. And that fits into this idea of this series around civic actors, kind of global issues at a local level or regional level. And I wanted to ask, do you think, Samra, that right now, the bigger the problem, of which there are many and they're very big, the more important it is to go local? How does that, is there an inverse relationship there that can perhaps unlock some more of our impact?
Yeah, and it's, I think CEO previously, my old job, it was kind of the opposite. It was one intervention that was really studied well that we brought to different communities. And this is like very embedded in community. So I'm kind of like in the middle on it where I think you cannot ignore community. And like each community is different, yet there are things that are common. And it's like, how do we thread that needle of making sure the things that we know either work or that have we can replicate, we can bring it to community, but then have the opportunity to make it everyone's their own, And I think that's a important, but to answer your question, yeah, I think you have to have things happening locally. There has to be buy-in locally. If part of what I'm trying to do is dismantle might be aggressive, but probably dismantle some of the parts of capitalism that I think have been, oppressing people. It's that way. It's like everything's a franchise, everything's a McDonald's, everything is like just, cookie cutter.
Yeah.
And it takes away from like how within certain places, there's actually something different and unique in each place. And so I think that's where community is going to be really important to counteract some of this, massive scale and replication that we've seen, across all aspects of our world.
We've had so many interesting conversations on the podcast over these last few years, and especially this last few months. In talking to Dale Anglin at Press Forward and Sarah Beth Berman at the American Journalism Project, in those cases in particular, both focused on journalism, both focused on local news, the conversation has we've gotten into the conversation about how have we abdicated the relationships at the local level. I'm literally looking out my window at my neighbors across the street. What agency do I want to reclaim, or I'm getting to know people that I live near and around whom I have shared concerns? And I think some of that, certainly can be fun, and it doesn't have to be hard. And I think it can have a political impact. If I was just telling my husband, I said, before the year is up, I want to put a flyer on everybody's, about the 16 houses that are kind of most closest to ours, and invite people over to a little, mingle, a little holiday mingle before the year is up. And, I only know, golly, some of the 16 I'm thinking about, I probably only know, I don't know if I know half of them by name. And I've lived here 3 years. So I'm just wondering how that's connected to local solutions as we get to know each other. And I can do something about that. I can decide I care and want to be in communion and community with people I live near and around.
Yeah, it's actually so true. I live in Brooklyn, and I say hi to my neighbors, but I'm always like, I should organize a block party. But then at the same time, one of the things I love the most about definitely my work at CEO and what I'm trying to bring to Dodge is when I go meet community partners and I walk through their projects with them, and just like really being proximate, like nothing fills me up more, because there's so many good ideas, there's so many cool people, just like fun personal people. And so I think it's giving ourselves grace that we might not be able to do that in every facet of what we do, but the more, even just having one conversation a day, or like really trying to connect with somebody, not with a goal of getting something out of it. I think that's a big thing. It's like, I want to hear you. I want to listen to you. Like, cool if we make connections like that will help us both, but that's not really the point. We have a big mayoral election here, and not to get, it's not about political, but the front runner, Mamdani, was talking about his campaign being different. And I think one of the differences, they've been knocking on doors. Like, they've really been engaging. Like, no matter where you are, there's people knocking on doors. And it's this idea of, there's not an algorithm for winning something or doing well all the time. Like, there may be, but there's also just a very simple way of just hearing people out and listening. So I think that's something I've been thinking about quite a bit.
I love it. There's also been fun themes of conversation on the podcast about finding a third thing. So kind of to whatever degrees we think things are binary and you're on this side, I'm on that side. And what's that? I mean, the third thing could be, a French bulldog, could be sailing or bowling. It could be age group, right? A bunch of people that come together that are in a certain age group, and ice cream. It's one of the things like, so we do ice cream on the podcast. It's like a third thing, like, kind of like, maybe you're having a hard time talking about other things, but what can we talk about together? And then we start to see each other's humanity in those conversations.
Absolutely. I was at Aspen, the Aspen Ideas Forum came to Newark 2 weeks ago, which was awesome. And they had these like salons where you're just talking about things. And one of the articles was just about how once you draw lines around something, you kind of lose the ability to think about what more it could be. So like, we have to let ourselves be imaginative. We have to let ourselves think about what's possible. But the minute you start drawing boxes around things or binaries or limits, it limits your own creativity and your ability to make ideas. So this idea of like just cutting across those and not letting those define you or define relationships, I think is really important. It's hard because the world is structured to make us think that way. But I think that's definitely people who are working to change the world really have to think about what could be possible. Without any boundaries.
And putting lines around it, even that phrasing is super accessible. And I think it's not like setting it up as like an evil thing to have done, but just an awareness that you might have done that. And even say you put 3 of the 4 lines around something, keep one line open, don't make a full box around it, right? Like, keep one side open for new ideas to flow in and new possibilities.
Absolutely. And it's funny because I'm a very structured person. I like having all my stuff, but it is like, you can't, you have to sometimes think, wait, why is it that way? Why have I defined it in such a way that I can't get beyond it, especially if it's not serving a purpose that we need it to serve. So I think that's really important. And it's hard to do, but I think it would be great if more people did it.
I'm less of a stoic than my husband, but he studies a lot of stoicism, and so I think I'm getting this right. He talked about there's a stoic principle that there's more than one handle from which to pick something up, and just think about what handle do you want to choose, and that gives me that same idea. I want to say a little bit more about your work there at Dodge in New Jersey, and so the focus on housing access and kind of economic opportunity, jobs, entrepreneurship, et cetera. And you guys really articulate the racial wealth gap, specifically on the website. And I'm just going to quote the statistics here. In spite of New Jersey's prosperity, that it is not shared equally, and we know that to be true all over, not just the nation, but the world. And a recent analysis showed that the median household wealth for a white household is $662,500, and under 20,000 for Black and Latino families. And the gap has doubled since the pandemic.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited, and you're using the phrases and the words right now that, people are worried about, what's the vocabulary, what are they going to keep on their website and all of that. And I really appreciate that you're just naming, it's just facts, right? You're just naming those facts. And I'd love you to talk a little bit more about these 2 pillars, the housing access and the broader economic opportunity.
Yeah, and it's it's interesting, and Dodge is doing a really good job of kind of going from racial justice to closing the racial wealth gap. And one of the things I did when I started is like, okay, and within that, what are the levers that are most impactful? Because we're a foundation, but we're not the Ford Foundation, so we have limited resources. And so one of the things, home ownership. So the reason it's doubled is because home values in New Jersey have increased substantially in the places where predominantly white people own homes. So that, one of those things, and I told my team, we have to hold our breath, because the gap might continue to increase because home values are increasing, but we might still be making movement along the opportunities for people. But that's a big one. And homeownership's tough. Like it's so hard. So while that is the main driver, we want to think about, let's first get people housed, get them stably housed. Let's not get them evicted. Let's then move to building their credit, then move to like, there's very cool innovations in the housing space. And this is an area I've been learning a lot more about in the past few months, just around, rent to own opportunities or land trusts. So there's a lot that you can do absent just your traditional methods of home ownership. And then the second, obviously not surprising, is income. You need to raise income. And part of that is obviously raising wages, through whether it's job training programs or pushing employers to raise wages. But then it's also like, what's the drag on income, which is the costs. And this is the thing I think that's coming up quite a bit around affordability. I know everyone's aware of the SNAP, the awful fact that SNAP is not going to be funded in November, and then who knows for how long. That costs money. Food costs money for families. And so things like food, childcare, these are not like, discretionary items. These are really things that you have to fund. And so I think that's been something that we really been thinking about, is both how do you increase income, but how do you figure out how to stop the growth in the costs that families have. So that's kind of how we've been thinking about it. It's harder, I'd say, on the income side. There's just not, because of the way our economy is really concentrated by very few players. It's like, how can we move the needle there? Still a lot, like you said, ownership. These ownership models are really interesting, entrepreneurship. So I'd say Dodge is, we know kind of what it is. We're open to things that work and bringing them to our communities, and then we're open to trying things out. And one of the great things that I really credit our board with is their excitement to use our endowment. They're like, if there's something that works that doesn't fit in a grant model, go for it. And so when you think about housing development, a lot of the reason it's so expensive is because it's expensive to build and things like that. So we're able to use the endowment as well to move our mission, which is awesome.
And that's making some impact investments out of the endowment in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. So we've already made some, and we're just going through that journey of how do you do it and do it in a way that fits with the grants, but the appetite is there to really kind of bring all of our resources to address this issue.
Yeah, and for folks that are less familiar, and I'm sure many are familiar, but for those that aren't, in the foundation space, an endowed foundation, that money has been, bequeathed for this charitable purpose. The requirement by the IRS is that the foundation, the philanthropic entity, has to spend 5% of that annually. But guess what? That's 5%. There's 95% that is sitting there. First of all, there's a lot of interest in and concern about, where are those 95% of the dollars invested, and are those investments counter to your philanthropy? So people are looking at that. And then as Samra's talking about, in addition, there's like, what can let's get that money to work as well. So making investments in, for example, housing and other opportunities that support the philanthropic mission as well. It's really exciting. Let's go get your ice cream for the next little bit of this conversation. And I'm going to remind folks about Taharka Brothers, our ice cream sponsor. That's spelled TAHARKA, taharkabrothers.com. They are a social enterprise, which is super cool, because that's something Samra and I have in common. We've both worked at Red F, which is an entity that funds and supports and amplifies social enterprises, which are double bottom line businesses. So that means, folks, that there's a product or service, just like a regular business doing a product or service, but then there's also a social mission to it. And Taharka Brothers has that. It's also employee owned, which is another cool feature of the company. And then, probably I shouldn't bury the lead here. It is such good ice cream. So what flavor did you choose?
I should tell folks, hard.
They send 6 pints.
So excited, but I had to go with cookies and coffee because I really love coffee ice cream, and then I like cookies and cream, but I feel like sometimes it's too sweet for me. So this is like perfect, I feel like. And I did have
Okay, Jinx, look I have the same cookies and coffee. Yep. And I chose it because we are 3 hours apart right now. And so it's still kind of breakfast time for me. So I kind of thought that would be a nod to the time of day. So when the ice cream, were you home when the ice cream arrived?
Mm-mm.
Who discovered it?
My son.
Oh,
when
how
I
fun.
see on the video camera, it's funny because we've let him start to like walk home by himself. So he's opening the door and he's like looking at the box, and then I get a text like, you got a pink box here. Can I open it? I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, open it, but don't eat it yet.
It is really, really fun, you guys. It's a hot pink box. It's pretty good too. It's packaged really well, and it can sit on your porch for a few hours.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then, so has everybody had their hands off the ice cream up to this moment?
They had a little bit. There was
Okay.
I think it was like a vegan strawberry ice cream,
Mm.
which is really exciting, or it was like a coconut milk ice cream, so with strawberry, so it was really yummy too. So I let them have that one.
All right. Well, the weekend is here, and your the podcast will be done. So, like, it can be a real ice cream centered weekend.
Well, I'm hosting, since it's Halloween
Oh
today,
yeah.
I'm hosting a sleepover with the girls and two of their friends. So I was like, all right, I gotta get some sweets. And I'm like, no, I actually have ice cream we can give them. So it's all good. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, so great. All right. So one of the things I like to ask when we're eating ice cream is, what's the scoop on how you came to care and sharing a memory of kind of a recognition the world is bigger than you and your family and maybe even just the people on your block, like, and that you felt that you had a role to play in a kind of global citizen and making the world a better place.
Yeah, I mentioned it before, but it's definitely like where I came from. And I'm not sure if anyone spent time in a country that's like a truly developing country. And it's not to say poverty in America isn't bad, but
Yeah.
when you go to a place like Pakistan or India, like it is so stark, the difference of the haves and the have-nots. And in a way where it sometimes feels hopeless, like how will you cross this bridge? How can somebody who's truly in poverty there move forward? And so in that sense, as much as America's got its stuff going on, like this still existence that you could
Mm.
possibly make it, like there's some of that is important. But I think that was really early on, just like really hit me. I'm an empath, so
Yeah.
I think about it. And then just anytime I meet, especially at CEO, I just meet people who came home who just had a rough go of it, and the way they kind of come back with such positivity, but also a lot of lack of confidence, or not feeling like they're good enough. So there's nothing that makes me feel worse than like people who feel like they don't have something good that they can offer. And so I think the more, to me, that's like I always want to see the good in anybody, and not just the good, but their ability, their potential. Like I really think potential is just about access to different
Mm.
things. And so everybody has that potential. It's more about giving everybody access to the same types of resources. So I'd say that's my cause. Like I still just, like, anytime I see anybody showing any sense of resiliency, it's like really moves
Mm.
me, because I think that is part of the human spirit that we should capture.
Yeah.
And then what we should be doing is trying to create a system that supports that. And just works with people to be able to give them like anything they would want, the tools to do what they
Yeah.
want to do.
How old were you first time you went to Pakistan?
Well, the first time I was like young, maybe like 6, but it was in college, because
Mm.
I was also at that time, I was an econ major, but I was a minor in Middle East and South Asian studies. So I was learning a lot about like colonialism, post-colonialism. So that was also where this idea of the history of how things come to be and how there are these like power dynamics really was interesting to be juxtaposed against the reality of where it was. And so that was, again, the first time I was just really close to all
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
So it weaved together. I think that's sort of what weaved together, that it's possible to bring, what you're learning with like what your experience is, in a way.
And how has that shown up, all of this showing up for you as a parent with your kids and them observing you doing the work you're doing?
I hope they observe it. I think it's showing up. I think they see that their dad works in unions. I
Mhm.
work in this space, so both of their parents are in a situation where they're really trying to help people. So I think that's something that we just constantly try to reinforce. But we took them to last year or 2 years ago at CEO. We have a success banquet, so it's basically celebrating people who have reached a 1 year milestone of employment. And they were just like, they were moved by the stories and just hearing people talk. And like this man Wallace, who's an amazing staff member at CEO, was the MC, and he's also a comedian. So my son was just like, Mr. Wallace is so funny and so cool. And then when and would share this, that he was previously incarcerated. And so I think my son in particular just started to kind of make connections with like, why did that happen? That the world is not binary. It's not good and bad. It's not you make one mistake and that's it. It was really like that you're a whole person and there's a lot involved with you. So that was one of the times where I realize it's important for me to make sure that they're very proximate to everybody that they can be. And it's hard when you're living, I live in Brooklyn, but sometimes I'm like, do I live in Brooklyn? Because you're still in a bubble. So I think I'm trying to create as many opportunities for them to be aware of their privilege and then be aware of, how to engage with everybody, and everybody is sort of just like them, just might have different experiences.
Talk a little bit about the transition from, and I'm oversimplifying, but I think there's a thread of this, from being a grant seeker to a grant maker. Those of us that have worked in the grant seeking fundraising role at nonprofit organizations, it seems like, oh my God, if only I could be on the other side. And when I talk to folks on the giving side, as I often get to do, and I've gotten to do that a few times myself, they're like, well, it's not that easy. But when you're on the other side, yeah, I'll take those problems any day. How has that been, that transition? What are you finding surprisingly challenging about it? And how much were you right that there is a certain amount of like relief in being in that different role?
That was like, I mean, to be honest, and I tell this to everybody about, my recent transition, is I was worried. I'm like, a foundation, is it going to be boring? Like they're always talking about strategy. And it's definitely not boring. I've told everybody that it's not boring working in a foundation. There's a lot going on, but it's different kinds of issues. At CEO, I'd literally be waking up to a call that like something really intense happened to one of our participants, versus here, it's not as day-to-day stressful. But definitely the biggest thing is, people take your calls. I told someone, I'm like, do I need an intro to this person? They're like, we'll take your call. And I am worried about that because I don't really care. Like the whole like, oh, it's a foundation and you're this, like, that is not me. Like I try to be as down to earth as possible. So everyone should check me. And if a year's time I'm hoity toity, but yeah, like I think it's just weird. And I get it. It's like you have resources in one way. And so there's a lot more people who want to talk to you and want things from you. And it can be hard because I really want to give everybody everything because it's a tough world out there. So that's been a challenge and a change of just being on this other side, and philanthropy, and it can be overthought sometimes. And so I'm just learning that a little bit. I mean, everybody I met has been amazing and thoughtful, but just the institution of philanthropy, I think, is an interesting one that I had a little bit less. Like I just knew I had to like work the funders when I was at CEO, but this is kind of different. So yeah, that's probably been not the hardest, but it's just one where it feels like a little different from my personality. So I want to make sure that I like stay grounded in the work and the impact, and not so much like, the titles and the dollars.
Yeah. Well, it does feel like maybe one of the the benefits, kind of this moment is, now some people have kind of abandoned the rethinking that philanthropy was doing and they're reverting back to old or even worse behaviors, but others are saying, this whole idea that like, the system isn't broken, it wasn't working anyways, let's in this rubble that we're now sorting through, what are we going to create that's different and fair? We did a Just Transition series back in the spring, and had a bunch of great folks on talking about this kind of the new economy, the different economy, in the sense of like, what are the different forms of currency that we want to lift up beyond just the kind of the usual, the dollar. Where have you found yourself as you've taken on this role in this? You said the philanthropy can kind of overthink itself, but there is a lot of thinking going on and a lot of challenging and voices out there challenging foundations and philanthropy, to empty out the accounts. Like, if you're waiting for a rainy day, it is a tsunami. How are you in your own head, and then also leading the organization, leading Dodge? How is that striking you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I definitely don't think we should be sitting and being like, it can only be 5%. Like that's it. That's the rules. And we're just here to it's not here to make Dodge live forever. It's here to like eradicate the problem that we're aiming to do. My one concern maybe with the whole spend all your endowment movement is just, I'm concerned about the government and them being absent as a major funder. Obviously, philanthropy cannot substitute government, but I guess right now we're a major buffer
Yeah.
in terms of funding. So that's the only thing I think I'm like grappling with is like, it's not, again, it's not a binary. It's not spend it all down or keep it at 5%, but it's like, how do we think about this moment and then what's going to happen hopefully in a few years that would be able to use philanthropy to sustain maybe a different type of way in which we're resourcing things. So I'm still thinking about that part, but I definitely think again, it's like the institution itself is just an institution, but
Yes.
what do we do with that those resources to make those resources really expand impact as much as possible?
You referenced this earlier, and by the time this airs, God willing, we'll be at a juncture and a better solution. But we are on the eve. We're doing this. We're recording on Halloween. It's the night before November 1, and the SNAP payments that you referenced for November. Any recommendations for? I mean, literally, Summer, this morning I was Googling like what to do tomorrow to help SNAP families. Like where, like. Talk about local level. I mean, I was kind of thinking to myself, I always kind of poo-pooed in my head, like canned food drives. That seemed like such an insufficient thing to do. But are we at a canned food drive kind of weekend and moment? And what are you seeing communities do? And I know you probably would say, in your community, find out what to do and who to support. But any thoughts for this kind of crucible moment?
Yeah, I mean, I've been trying to think about it. We have we had some great conversations with our folks across New Jersey. I think in Newark, the United Way has really thought about how to provide immediate support. Definitely give to any food bank,
Yeah.
food pantry you have. Like they're really great at distribution. I think a lot of interesting work's been done around waste. So grocery stores, restaurants, like they have like food waste that's not still good food. Can we access those channels to get more food out there? I think universities and other anchor institutions, again, can be ways that we think about their supply chain of food and then how they can open their doors. One thing I'm concerned about is, there's a stigma of what people on SNAP, are like or look like. And, that's all messed up too. But 30% of people in New Jersey who are on SNAP are working families. 40% are children. Like these are folks that you might not even know they're accessing SNAP. So there is a stigma there and they might feel, I don't want to let people know, so I don't want to go to a food pantry. So it's trying to figure out how do we get to everybody who needs it. But this is definitely an all hands on deck moment. And just anything you see, I think is better than nothing. And again, this is an example of where I coming from direct service, I know like people have immediate needs and you have to meet those immediate needs. And then we have to pull back and see what's going to happen. But it could be a great opportunity to bring together, grocery stores and bodegas and philanthropy and nonprofits. So I'm hoping that we can really have some collective community action, but it is really a profoundly like sad thing. First time I think in history that it's gone unfunded. So I'm hoping it only lasts through November.
Yeah. But you're making me think like I literally could, at my closest supermarket, go in and ask a question. Are you engaged in providing, kind of food that's kind of being pulled off the shelf because of an expiration date or something and making that available? Just asking the question. I talk to the manager and just, I suspect if it's a big chain, they're probably involved in something. But if they're not, it's almost like a politician needing to hear a constituent call. Like if a store manager has had a customer say, hey, are you doing anything? Are you helping? That creates and raises additional awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, so like, I looked at my LinkedIn, like sometimes LinkedIn is, whatever, but it was really helpful because I saw a group in San Francisco, Crankstar, is working with the mayor to kind of provide about I think it's $9 million to people on SNAP. So this is where local really, it's like, you can't do this in one way. It has to be a local move. And so just looking at what different communities are doing and then borrowing there and seeing if we can map it on, I think that's a really great way that community can also help other communities. Yeah. It's just like, how do we make sure those connections are there?
All right. One last kind of intersection with work and play question. How have you found yourself, previously, because you haven't been at Dodge that long, so it could be at Dodge or it could be previously, bringing fun, bringing joy and play into the workspace for team members that are, heads down, doing really hard and important work every day?
That means so much to me. Like the work, making people, especially people in like this space, they work so hard, often completely unsung. A big thing was just like, let's go break bread together. Let's hang out together. How's your child doing? So I think there's a lot of just like, give them the fun. I started out my job as an investment bank. Those people have fun. They do stuff and they have a good time. And it's like, how can we create like joyful moments, with folks and Dodge, it's been early, but same, like, after a staff strategy session, let's all go to lunch together. I think we're going to do some like paint by numbers stuff for the holidays. And so just like little things like that, like making people want to come to work, not just because of the work, but because they like each other and they feel cared for. So in my role, and I've been lucky to be, in a leadership role for a while, is like, show them you care. Like, I'm surprised how many people are like, wow, you remember that thing I told you about my mom? I'm like, yes, I remember. Like, when I talk to you, I'm like legitimately interested. So I think for those in leadership roles or any roles, it's like really have thoughtful interactions and like really care about the people, because I think that means a lot.
Yeah, I love it. So that's, we were just talking about, kind of activism and actions in the immediate term, helping people, in your community. And we're talking about then how you create community and humanity at work. Those feel like calls to action. Anything else you want to add as a call to action to the audience? Think about these kind of primarily full-time change makers that are listening to PlayFull Podcast.
There's so many. One thing I saw a clip on something that was like, in this moment, like if you really want to show like a sort of resistance, like you have to take on some risk. And so I feel like this idea of like, we all kind of are appalled, but then we don't really want, and I'm guilty of this. We don't want to mess up our day-to-day or our lifestyles. And so it's like, again, no one's saying you have to get, at risk of being, something really intense, but just like push yourself to be like, how can I like shake up my like day-to-day in a way that actually helps people? And so that's the way we're going to have a movement that really supports one another, but it can't just be a small group of people taking on the real risk. And if you see that, so it's so great seeing these videos of local, community members standing up against, people who are being, taken away by ICE and things like that. So you see it now more, but it's like more of that energy where we're all in it together. And I'm willing to take a bit of a risk to actually support, my fellow community.
Yeah. What can I that thought of like, what can I put on the line today?
Exactly. And I
my own
check
privilege
myself all
and
the time about that.
Yeah, I love it. Well, it is so fun to catch up with you. And I'm so glad that everyone got to listen to us do that, because it was just a great conversation. And I'm just grateful for all your work, and I'm going to be watching it, staying close, and call on us, the Playful community, to support your work in any way needed. Thanks again for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much for the ice cream.
Enjoy.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to the PlayFull Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review it on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know of a leader or organization that's doing good in the world and you'd love to help us help them amplify their message, I would love to have them on the show. Go to the show notes and click there, or go to impactfulinc.com/contact. And that's impactful with 2 L's, inc.com/contact. And let us know who you're thinking about. Can't wait to see you next time.